Hey everyone, my name is Sean, and in today's video we're going to be talking about how to beat and crush Swordsoul Tenyi, a deck that's going to be very popular after today's update, which is still currently going on in maintenance right now. So I'm going to be using good old Chrome to talk about the strengths and weaknesses and how you may be able to beat this deck if you're not going to be playing it, or even if you are going to be playing it. First, let's cover the strengths and weaknesses of this deck, or mainly just the strengths, as this deck is very powerful. This deck is a combination of two worm-based archetypes, Swordsoul and Tenyi. It has two engines that play simultaneously, allowing it to play through many different forms of disruption. Both archetypes have a good normal spell starter, one being Swordsoul Emergence and the other being Vessel for the Dragon Cycle, meaning it is very good at playing through negates such as Ash Blossom and Joyous Springs, as when one card is negated, they can just flex and go into the other one. In addition, they also have access to really powerful cards such as Incredible Ecclesia, which I haven't got up here. She is here. Incredible Ecclesia, which is a card that can be special summoned to the field to get a Swordsoul monster out of the deck. So it's just another way that you can get monsters to the field to carry on their plays and play through interruptions, such as many popular hand traps. In a nutshell, there are two engines going on simultaneously. There are 3 Tenyi monsters that are often used, and these Tenyi monsters can get them to a level 8 Synchro boss monster, like Draco Berserk of the Tenyi, quite easily. Or it can go even further than that and get into a level 9 boss monster, such as Xiaofang, Phantom of the Yangtze, which in a nutshell will turn off all light-based monster effects while it is on the field. Then you have the Swordsoul engine, which has 1 card starters that give you a monster on the field and a token, which is a tuner as a level 4. So if you do it via Long Wand, that's going to give you a quick way to get a level 10 synchro, such as Baron de Fleur. And then with Taya and Moye, you get to a level 8 monster, such as Emancipator, Risen, Dragite, giving you another way to access negate. This deck is very efficient, and it allows you to pump up monsters very quickly without having to do crazy long combos, say like a Virtual World or a Dragon Link deck. You can just pretty much use 1 card and get to a boss monster like that. So we're going to talk about what works well and what doesn't work well against this archetype and what you should be using. Just to recap again what the strengths and weaknesses are. So both engines, normal spell starters. They have a lot of cards that activate in the graveyard for the Tenyi engine. So they kind of dodge field-based negation. Access to lots of level 8 and level 9 synchros. Hauki, Firebracks, and Aurorodon can often be used, giving them another way and another line of play. Then you've got really good boss monsters, and then also they still have other good tech cards in their deck. Many Swordsoul Tenyi decks like things like Pot of Prosperity, Call by the Grave, Cross-Out Designator to counter off hand traps and playthrough interruptions like Ash Blossom. And then you've also got things like Fusion Destiny being used for the Dragon Phoenix Enforcer engine, Dragon Phoenix Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer engine into this deck as well. That helps it play through even more interruptions. So they could put a bunch of boss monsters on the field, summon out Phoenix Enforcer, and then they've got a really good kind of another form of interruption and a backup plan as well. The deck is very resilient, but what will work well against it? So first of all, I'm going to talk about Ash Blossom. You're probably still going to be playing Ash Blossom, but Ash Blossom isn't that good against this deck. She's okay, she will work, but she can't do a whole lot on her own. She doesn't just shut down their turn like she can do against some weaker decks in the game. I wouldn't deliberately put Ash Blossom into counter Swordsoul Tenyi, but I would probably still play it because she's still very versatile and has a wide range of applications, and plus of her effect against Maxi. Maxi is really good against Swordsoul Tenyi if you can get it to go off. Again, the thing with Ash Blossom and Maxi is they are both the 2 most popular cards in the game, with multiple players running 3 copies of each. But because Ash Blossom doesn't really do a whole lot to the deck, it means a Swordsoul Tenyi player is probably going to hold their negations, like Call by the Grave and Cross-Out Designator, deliberately to counter your Maxi. So you have to think about how they're going to their mindset is and how clever they are about playing through your interruptions. Ash Blossom is not a very good bait against this deck, and therefore this will be directed towards the more stronger negates, such as Maxi. So you're going to need other stuff to protect it and back it up. A good card for that is Ghostbell and Haunted Mansion. Ghostbell and Haunted Mansion can not only stop things like Call by the Grave, so your hand traps like Maxi can go off, but it can also work well against some Swordsoul cards, such as Taya because Taya likes to banish a card in the graveyard, and then also all the Tenyi cards as well can be banished from the graveyard in order to activate their effects. So Swordsoul can work, Ghost Bell can work really well against those to shut them down and negate them, and also protect you from Call by the Grave. Speaking of which, another hand trap which is really good against this deck is Gamma. There's lots of monster effects, and Gamma works well against them. Gamma is a card you're going to see a lot of play soon, because it also works well in Swordsoul Tenyi decks for when they use their effects, say such as Swordsoul Emergence, Incredible Ecclesia, or Vessel of the Dragon Cycle. Because they haven't got a monster on the field often when they activate these cards, if your opponent does Ash you, you can chain with Gamma, or if they max Z you, you can chain with a Gamma, and then you get a level 2 monster tuner on the field, and a level 6 normal monster, allowing you to get to one of your level 8 synchros very quickly. So Gamma is very good both against and also in Swordsoul Tenyi. Very powerful card overall. In fact, I'm going to pull it up to S tier because it's very good and in this matchup. Then, let's see, other cards that are really popular against this is Artifact Lancia. Where is Lancia? Blue boy with a big sword, there he is. Lancia, around the same, a bit better than Ash Blossom. There is a lot of banishing that happens in this deck. Tenyi cards like to banish in order to trigger their effects. And then Swordsoul cards, some of their cards like to banish. Or trigger when they are banished. Taya likes to banish to get a token on the field, but then also sometimes they play other Swordsoul cards. If I go into show you one of them, particularly things like Swordsoul Blackout. Swordsoul Blackout, when it is banished, gets you a Swordsoul token. That's kind of the gimmick with the deck, so they do like to banish quite a bit, and so Artifact Lancia may be good against them. However, it isn't always good against every matchup in the game or in Master Duel, so you may find yourself in a situation where this card is dead. But against the most popular decks in the game right now, it can be good. It can be good against Tri-Brigade, Ellich, Drytron, against Eva particularly, not too good, but it's okay. Virtual World, obviously, are good, but then against decks like Kaiju Kaguya with the Luna, Fairy Tail Luna, and all the Kaijus, it's not that good against them, so it's matchup dependent. Another popular hand trap against them is going to be Infinite Impermanence and Effect Veiler. Both of them can target a monster on the field and negate their effects. They're both really good in the regards for shutting off Swordsoul Taya and Swordsoul Moye, as when they hit the field, they have to activate when they're on the field, so they're good at turning these two cards off. However, they don't really do anything to Long Yuan, and they don't do anything really to the Tenyi monsters, so they're only somewhat good. They can also be used against the boss monsters if they haven't already got a way to negate Imperm or Veiler on the field, so you could use that. But I'm going to pop Veiler down a little bit lower than Imperm because Veiler is also weak to Xiao Fang, who turns off light-based monsters because it will be summoned to the field using Baxia of the Yangzing, so all light-based monster effects will be turned off, and Veiler won't be able to be used if you haven't used it up to that point, which can be something you have to think about if you still have Gamma. If you've drawn into Gamma, or you've drawn into Veiler, or even Artifact Lancia after you've resolved your Max C. Another light-based card that's also vulnerable to Xiao Fang is Nibiru. Nibiru is good against these decks, but not too good in my opinion. Swordsoul Tenyi, the Tenyi engine is very good to use Nibiru against because it summons more than 5 times in order to get to its level 8. So once it's got its level 8, Nibiru will be live, but if you wait one more and it gets to Xiao Fang, Nibiru will no longer be able to be used thanks to Xiao Fang's effect. And then against the Swordsoul cards, they don't really need to summon more than 5 times in order to get their boss monsters to the field. In fact, 2 monsters is enough. But they often will maybe push to get more, but by the time to get more monsters in the field, so they haven't just got one. But if they have got multiple monsters in the field, by then they're pretty much going to have a Baron de Fleur or something that can negate a Nibiru on the field already. So it can be good, but it's not always so good. And then other hand traps, there really isn't many to talk about here. Drawn Lockbird is okay, not that great against it. Drawn Lockbird can be good against the normal spells, and you can use it after that. And if your opponent's playing things like Pot of Prosperity or Pot card, then yeah, it can be good. But with things like Incredible Ecclesia or Tenyi Spirit Ashuna, is it Ashuna? Yes, Ashuna. They can summon directly from the deck anyway, so Drawn Lockbird doesn't always work against this deck, but it's okay. DD Crow can be fine. If you're running DD Crow, it can be okay in this matchup, as you can banish cards in the graveyard before your opponent gets to use them, but it's not too great against them. And then we have things like Dimension Shifter and also Skullmeister. Again, they're okay, but they're not really great against this deck, as a lot of their cards can play through being banished and don't mind being banished at all, and Skullmeister is pretty weak in the current meta in my opinion. In terms of tech cards, Call by the Grave is amazing against this deck, and as is Crossout Designator, especially if you're playing the mirror matchup. A lot of these cards resolve in the graveyard. You can negate a critical Ecclesia, you can shut down any target that Sword Souls might be using or have sent to the graveyard, say via Long Run. A lot of the Tenyi cards like to activate in the graveyard, so you can call by the grave them before they activate in order to shut them down. And then Crossout Designator can be also really good against a wide variety of cards, so those two are very good cards against this matchup. And then other tech cards, Triple Tactics Talent I don't think is really that good here. If you're going first, yeah, it can be good against their hand traps, but then you're playing against their hand traps and not really their engine. And if they've already got a board, then with other cards it can be good to bait out and negate, but Triple Tactics Talent is probably going to get negated because it's such a powerful card. So it can be good if you've got multiple interactions, but it's kind of meh. What would be cool is if you steal one of your opponent's negates with this card, and that way you have a negate on the board and they don't, so that could always be kind of cool. Similar kind of problem applies to Lightning Storm, Super Polymerization, and Raigeki. Not let's say Super Poly, but these cards here, typical board breakers, they're good, but you need multiple of them to kind of break their board because they're going to have multiple negates on the board. Super Poly isn't that good against this deck, so if you're looking to play a deck like Despia or even Shadows or Invoke, it isn't really that good against this deck, as they have so many different monsters of different attributes, and they don't really have, say, generic targets that can be used against them, so it's going to be very, very hard to find one. There is a card that comes out in the future called Guardian Chimera that will help you in this matchup, but that won't be out in the game for a while, so Super Poly is not that good. And evenly matches the same thing as the other board breaker cards, same kind of principle. But cards that are really good that are board breakers against them are Forbidden Droplets and to an extent Dark Ruler No More. I haven't got a copy of Dark Ruler No More, but if you don't know what it is, here is DRNM, Dark Ruler No More. Also very good in this matchup. It allows you just to let your opponent do whatever they want to do and then just break their board by negating all face-up monsters in the field. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. Dark Ruler No More is often preferred in this matchup because it's very, very reliable. But if you use Dark Ruler No More, you're going to need another card to get rid of the monsters on the board, and you can't do damage to your opponent during the turn you use DRNM. But Forbidden Droplets is a little bit more versatile, and where DRNM is good against Swordsoul Tenyi, DRNM isn't always good against every matchup, so Forbidden Droplets is a little bit more versatile. What you often see is people running 2 Forbidden Droplets, 2 Forbidden Dark Ruler No More, so that if they're going second, they have a good way of breaking their board. And use either one of them, followed up by a Lightning Storm, Raigeki, evenly, or whatever your deck is trying to run, it's going to be easier to break their board. So those cards are really good. Or, you don't have to negate their effects, you can ignore them and use things like Lava Golem. Lava Golem is very, very good against this matchup, and I think this card alone is what's going to help keep Eldritch in the meta for a while. Lava Golem just tributes over 2 monsters, and decks like Eldritch don't care about their normal summon, so there's no downside to it. So you get rid of 2 of their negates. Now, there are ways for this engine to recover, so it won't permanently beat them and keep them down, but it can be enough for you to set up your own board with some of your own really good cards to kind of play for your opponent's stuff. The similar thing applies to Kaijus, but Kaijus are a little bit less effective because you only get rid of 1 monster, and often Swordsoul Tenyi has multiple monsters on the board. So yeah, it is use it if you need to, but you know, you might need a little bit more than just 1 Kaiju to help you out here. Once you have broken your opponent's board, or if you're going first, there are many good trap cards in the game, also really good against them. I wouldn't say pick Rivalry of the Warlords, but I just use this here as a placeholder for Floodgate trap cards. They are all very similar, but one that I particularly think of is Goes and Match. Goes and Match is amazing against this deck. Goes and Match says each player can only control 1 attribute, and all of these cards are different attributes, so if you get this going live, then it pretty much shuts down the whole entire deck. In addition, even if you have Goes and Match going second, You can set it with a negate, flip it over, and then break their board, as they will only be able to control one attribute, so it will force them to get rid of something on the field if they don't negate this card, so it's also really good. And another floodgate that is also really good against this deck is there can be only one. You can only control one type of each monster. So a sword, what's great against that with Swordsoul is their token is a worm monster, plus the monster's a worm monster. They literally cannot use their effect when there can be only one is on the board, because they can only have one worm monster. And plus it shuts down Tenyis as well, so that card is also really good. Other ones like Vanity's Emptiness and Imperial Order are also good against the deck. VE stops special summoning, and Imperial Order stops their spells, and they have some really good powerful spells that they want to use. So if they've only got those as their starters, then yep, you're going to hurt them quite a lot. And then there's also Solemn Strike I really like in this matchup. Solemn Strike beats pretty much boss monsters in the game, so if you want to run it, and you think your opponent's going to go first and have one of these negates, you can set it, wait till it's live, and then when these effects activate, say you do a lightning storm or something, you can then chain a Solemn Strike to their negation, and this card works in so many situations as well. Things like Skill Drain are good against this deck. It shuts down Swordsoul monster effects, it shuts down the boss monster effects, but it does nothing to the Tenyi cards, although that's still pretty good for what it can do, so that card is really good in this matchup. Pankratop's not so much. Other cards that are really good to mention that are often commonly played, well, there's also Access Code Talker, Extra Deck Card Answers, Zeus, Nightmare Phoenix, and Nightmare Unicorn. They're good. If you can get to these cards, absolutely, but I wouldn't necessarily rely on them. But because these cards are in your extra deck, and they're very, very popular, you're very likely to have them. Be very wary of putting Zeus on your board though, because Zeus is a light monster, and that will be negated by Xiaofang. So basically what your opponent will try to do if you've got Zeus on the board is they will do their Tenyi combo, they'll keep on playing until they get to the Xiaofang. You would have to nuke their board before the Xiaofang resolves, but once you've done your Zeus effect, assuming that you have no more materials, they will then just go into their Swordsoul engine, use Ecclesia, use their monsters, and keep on playing through your Zeus anyway. So it's okay, but it's the same kind of weaknesses as, say, a Lightning Storm as an interaction. The rest of the cards here, not really worth mentioning, so I'm not going to go through them. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. These are the cards I would choose to necessarily play against and beat Swordsoul Tenyi. If I've missed anything, feel free to let me know, and hopefully this helps you guys. And enjoy your patch overall. I think it's going to be very, very exciting. And yeah, just prepare for what's going to be a very, very new, different meta in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Take care.